What if Ned Stark refused Robert's offer and never went to King's Landing? Let's explore this alternate timeline together in the video. The Great Hall of Winterfell is alive with noise and warmth. King Robert Baratheon has ridden north with 300 men, the largest royal party the castle has seen in years. The feast stretches on for hours with toasts and songs and rivers of wine. But beneath the celebration, there is a shadow. Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, is dead. He served Robert faithfully for 14 years, holding the realm together while the king drank and feasted. Now he is gone, and Robert has ridden all this way not just for friendship, but for need. Down in the crypts beneath Winterfell, standing before the statue of Lyanna Stark, Robert makes his intentions known. He wants Ned to come south and serve as his new hand. He also proposes a betrothal between his eldest son, Joffrey, and Ned's daughter, Sansa, binding their houses together at last. It is the union Robert always wanted, Stark and Baratheon joined by blood. Ned does not answer right away. He tells Robert he is honored but wishes to speak with his wife first. That night, a letter arrives by Raven from the Eyrie. It is from Catelyn's sister, Lysa Arryn, Jon Arryn's widow. Written in a secret cipher that only the Tully sisters would know, the letter makes a terrifying claim. Jon Arryn was murdered, and the Lannisters are responsible. Catelyn brings it to Ned immediately, her hands shaking. Maester Luwin urges caution, but the message is clear. If the Lannisters killed the Hand of the King, then Robert is in danger, and going south means walking into the lion's den. In the true history, this letter is what finally convinces Ned to accept. He goes south to protect his friend and uncover the truth. But in this timeline, Ned Stark makes a different choice. He sits at the edge of their bed that night, staring at the letter, reading it again and again. Catelyn watches him from across the room, waiting. At last, he speaks.
I cannot go.
Catelyn crosses the room and sits beside him. She places a hand on his arm.
You read the letter. If the Lannisters murdered Jon Arryn, Robert could be next. You are the only man he trusts enough to protect him. If not you, then who?
That is precisely why I must stay. If I ride south, I bring our children into the heart of this conspiracy. Sansa would be betrothed to Joffrey, surrounded by Lannisters. Arya would be in a city full of daggers and whispers. And what of Bran and Rickon? What of Robb? If something happens to me down there, the North is leaderless.
Catelyn is quiet for a moment. She knows what Lysa's letter implies. She knows the danger, but she also knows Robert, and she knows what happens when a proud king is refused.
Robert will not take this well. He has ridden 1,000 miles to ask you. If you refuse him, you risk his anger. You risk the crown turning against the North.
Then let it turn. Robert is my friend, not my lord. He can find another hand. Tywin Lannister would leap at the chance. Or that schemer Littlefinger, or any of 100 southern lords who crave the power. But the North needs a Stark in Winterfell. Winter is coming, Cat. I can feel it in my bones. If I leave now, I may never return.
And Lysa's warning?
I will write to Stannis Baratheon. Jon Arryn was working with him before he died. If anyone knows the truth of what happened, it is Stannis. Let him carry that fight. It is his brother's kingdom after all.
The next morning, Ned meets Robert in the Godswood. The king is already half drunk despite the early hour, his massive frame leaning against the heart tree. When Ned tells him, Robert's face goes from confusion to disbelief to anger in the span of a heartbeat.
You are refusing me. I rode all the way to this frozen wasteland, and you are refusing me.
I am, Your Grace, and I am sorry for it. But my place is here. The North is vast, and there are threats beyond the wall that concern me. Mance Rayder gathers wildlings by the thousands. The Night's Watch sends raven after raven begging for men. I cannot abandon my duties here to play politics in King's Landing.
Ha! Politics. You think that is what this is? I need you, Ned. You are the only man in this kingdom I trust completely. Everyone else wants something from me. You are the only one who tells me the truth.
Then hear the truth now. You do not need me to run your kingdom. You need to run it yourself. Stop drinking yourself to death. Stop letting the Lannisters fill every seat of power around you. Take hold of the realm before it slips from your grasp entirely.
Robert stares at him, his jaw tight. For a long moment, neither man speaks. Then Robert shakes his head and lets out a bitter laugh.
You sound like Jon. He used to lecture me the same way. And look what happened to him.
Robert, I mean no disrespect. You are my king and my oldest friend. But you must understand, the North is not like the South. It cannot be governed from afar. My father knew that, and his father before him. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. That is not just a saying. It is the only thing that holds these lands together.
And what about the betrothal? I came here to join our houses, Ned. My son and your daughter. It was meant to be, just as it was meant to be for me and Lyanna.
Ned winces at the mention of his sister's name. He can see the old wound in Robert's eyes, the grief that has never truly healed.
Sansa is too young, Robert. Let her grow. Let Joffrey grow. If the match is still wise, in a few years we can revisit it. But I will not send my daughter into a nest of lions while their claws are still out.
Robert's face darkens, and for a heartbeat, Ned fears he has pushed too far. But then, the king lets out a long breath and waves his hand dismissively.
Fine. Keep your frozen castle and your frozen pride. But when things go to hell down there, and they will, do not say I did not ask for your help.
Robert, stay a few more days. Rest. Enjoy the hunt. But I will not be going south with you.
Robert leaves Winterfell 3 days later. The farewell is cold, but not hostile. The king clasps Ned's hand and tells him he is a stubborn fool, and Ned tells him to take care of himself. Neither knows it will be the last time they see each other. The betrothal between Sansa and Joffrey is quietly forgotten. The royal party rides south without a Stark among them, and as the banners disappear down the King's Road, Ned feels as though a great weight has been lifted from his shoulders. Catelyn watches from the ramparts, holding Rickon against her hip. When the last rider vanishes beyond the Wolfswood, she turns to Ned with a look that is equal parts relief and worry. He takes her hand and says nothing. There is nothing left to say. The choice is made. But the consequences of his refusal begin to ripple outward almost immediately. Without Ned in King's Landing, Robert is forced to look elsewhere for a hand. He settles on Jaime Lannister's uncle, Sir Kevin, at Cersei's suggestion, though the appointment is never formally made before events overtake them. The truth is that Robert does not care who serves as hand. He wants to hunt, to drink, to forget the burdens of the crown. And without his closest friend beside him, there is no one left who can rein him in. The small council continues to function as it always has, which is to say badly. Littlefinger hoards gold and debt in equal measure, Varys whispers in the shadows. Pycelle bows to whichever Lannister stands nearest. And Cersei moves her pieces across the board, with no Stark to stand in her way. Months pass. In King's Landing, Cersei continues her affair with Jaime in secret. Their children remain unchallenged as heirs to the throne. Stannis Baratheon broods on Dragonstone, having fled the capital after Jon Arryn's death. He knows the truth about Cersei's children, but without Ned to serve as an ally or a catalyst, he does not yet act. He waits and watches, gathering what strength he can among the lords of the Narrow Sea. Meanwhile, back in Winterfell, a different sort of trouble finds the Starks. Bran still climbs the broken tower. He still sees what he should not have seen. But in this timeline, the royal party has already departed. Jaime and Cersei are 1,000 miles away. Bran climbs, and he does not fall. The cat's paw assassin is never sent. Catelyn never rides south to warn Ned. She never encounters Tyrion Lannister at the Crossroads Inn. The spark that ignites the war between Stark and Lannister is never struck. And then Robert dies. It happens much the same way. Cersei has already laid her plans. Lancel Lannister plies the king with strong wine during the hunt. The boar catches Robert in the belly, and the wound festers. On his deathbed, Robert names Joffrey his heir. There is no Ned Stark to challenge the succession, no letter smuggled to Stannis, no desperate confrontation in the throne room. Joffrey takes the Iron Throne without resistance, and Cersei stands behind him as Queen Regent. The Lannisters have won without lifting a sword. When the Raven reaches Winterfell, carrying news of Robert's death, Ned is in the yard watching Robb spar with Theon. He reads the letter and goes very still. Catelyn finds him in the Godswood an hour later, kneeling before the hot tree.
Robert is dead.
Catelyn draws a breath.
How?
A hunting accident. A boar, they say. And now Joffrey sits the throne with the Lannisters at his back.
And Lysa's letter? If they truly killed Jon Arryn, then perhaps Robert's death was no accident either.
I know. I have been thinking the same. But we have no proof, and even if we did, what would we do with it? March south and accuse the Queen of murder? We have no allies in the capital. The Riverlands would support us if pressed, but against the might of the Westerlands and the Crown, it would be madness.
Then what do we do?
We watch. We wait. And we make the North strong enough that no southern army would dare cross the neck.
Ned immediately begins preparing. He calls his banners, not for war, but for readiness. He strengthens Moat Cailin, that ancient ruin that guards the only land approach to the north. He sends men and supplies to the Night's Watch, doubling the garrisons at Castle Black. He writes to the mountain clans and the Skagosi and the lords of the western shore. For the first time in a generation, the north begins to look inward and fortify. And crucially, he keeps Theon Greyjoy close. The boy remains his ward, a hostage against his father's good behavior. There is no mission to the Iron Islands, no chance for Balon Greyjoy to launch his mad invasion. In the south, however, the War of the Five Kings still erupts, though it is now a war of three. Stannis finally makes his move, publishing letters across the realm declaring that Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen are bastards born of incest. He proclaims himself the true king and gathers his forces on Dragonstone. His Red Priestess, Melisandre, fans his conviction with visions of fire and destiny. Renly, ever the ambitious younger brother, rides to Highgarden, weds Marjorie Tyrell, and declares his own claim with the might of the Reach behind him. He gathers nearly 100,000 swords, the largest army Westeros has seen since Robert's rebellion, and marches with the confidence of a man who believes the throne is already his. What is missing is the north. Robb Stark does not march south. There is no king in the north. The River Lords remain at peace, for there is no Catelyn to seize Tyrion, no Lannister raid on the Riverlands to provoke a war. Without Catelyn's arrest of Tyrion at the Crossroads Inn, Tywin has no reason to unleash the Mountain and his raiders upon the Riverlands. The Tullys sit behind their walls and watch the Baratheon brothers tear each other apart. Edmure writes to his sister asking what they should do, and Catelyn writes back telling him to do nothing, keep the gates shut and the swords sheathed. Let the stags bleed each other dry. Balon Greyjoy stirs on pike. He hears of the Southern War and dreams of crowning himself king once more. But the North is not distracted. Its armies have not marched south. Moat Cailin is garrisoned and rebuilt. The western shore is watched by Manderley galleys and Mormont scouts, and his son Theon remains a hostage in Winterfell. Without the opening he needs, Balon stays his hand. The Iron Islands remain restless but quiet, and the old Kraken broods in his castle, waiting for an opportunity that never comes. The war between Stannis and Renly unfolds much as it did. Melisandre's shadow kills Renly at Storm's End. Stannis absorbs many of the Stormlander bannermen and marches on King's Landing. But here, the battle takes a very different shape. Without the war in the Riverlands draining Lannister forces, Tywin is not pinned down at Harrenhal. He is free to respond to the threat immediately. And without Tyrion serving his hand, it is Tywin himself who organizes the defense of King's Landing. When Stannis sails up the Blackwater, he faces not only wildfire and a desperate garrison, but the full might of the Lannister army arriving from the west, joined by the Tyrells, who were won over by Littlefinger's scheming. The result is a devastating defeat defeat for Stannis. His army is shattered even more thoroughly than in the true history, and he limps back to Dragonstone with barely 1,000 men. The Lannister-Tyrell alliance is cemented. Joffrey is betrothed to Marjorie. Tywin serves as hand. The Iron Throne is, for the moment, secure. Robb watches all of this from Winterfell. He sits with his father in the Great Hall as ravens arrive carrying news of each battle. Though he is young, he understands what is happening. One evening, after hearing of Stannis' defeat at the Blackwater, he turns to Ned.
Father, should we have marched? If we had joined Stannis, we might have broken the Lannisters. Now they are stronger than ever.
Ned is quiet for a long moment. He stares into the fire.
Perhaps, but at what cost? The Lannisters had 80,000 swords between their own forces and the Tyrells. Even with the North, it would have been a near thing. And if we had lost, our family would be destroyed. Your brothers, your sisters, all of it gone for a southern war over a southern throne.
But Stannis was the rightful king. You said so yourself.
Stannis was the rightful king, and the world is full of rightful kings who never sat a throne. I chose my family, Robb. I chose the North. Some will call that cowardice. History might remember it as wisdom, or it might remember it as a failure of duty. I have made my peace with it.
The great Jon would not call it wisdom. He has been grumbling to anyone who will listen that we should have marched the moment Robert died. He says the North grows soft while lions feast.
The great Jon is a fine warrior and a loyal bannerman, but he has never had to weigh the lives of his children against the honor of his name. Let him grumble. When winter comes, and it will, he will be glad that the North still has its sons and its strength. The Southerners who bled themselves dry in their war will not be so fortunate.
And if the Lannisters come for us next, they have no enemies left. Stannis is broken. The Riverlands bent the knee without a fight. What stops Tywin from turning his eyes north?
The neck. 300 miles of swamp and bog that no southern army has ever crossed against a defended moat Catelyn. Tywin Lannister is many things, but he is not a fool. He will not waste his armies marching into ground that swallows men whole. So long as we do not provoke him, we are safe behind our walls, and that is enough.
Robb is unsatisfied, but does not press the matter. He throws himself into training, into lordship, into learning the lessons his father teaches him. And because the Starks remain whole, something remarkable happens. The North begins to prosper. With no war to drain its resources, Ned uses the years wisely. He repairs roads, stocks granaries, and prepares for the long winter that his house words promise. Moat Catelyn is rebuilt into a proper fortress. Its ancient towers, restored and garrisoned with men from the Reeds and Dustins. White Harbor expands its fleet under Lord Manderley, who builds warships and trading galleys alike, turning the port into the most powerful naval force north of the Trident. The mountain clans are brought closer into the fold, their fierce warriors invited to train alongside Winterfell's garrison in exchange for food and shelter. Ned also turns his attention to the Wall. He rides north to Castle Black and meets with Lord Commander Mormont, pledging men and supplies that the Watch has not seen in a generation. He sends his younger sons to visit, hoping they might understand the importance of the ancient order. Jon Snow, for his part, does not take the Black. Without the shame and restlessness that drove him to the Wall in the original timeline, Jon remains in Winterfell. He trains alongside Robb, serves as a capable lieutenant, and earns the respect of the household. He is still a bastard in the eyes of the world, still carries the weight of that name, but his father's presence softens the sting. Ned watches his nephew grow and sees Rhaegar's quiet strength mingled with the Stark resilience, and each day the secret grows heavier. Bran, who never fell and never broke, grows into a strong young man who rides and hunts with his brothers. He becomes a skilled archer and spends his days exploring the Wolfswood with Summer at his side. Arya trains with Winterfell's master-at-arms, wild and fierce as ever, begging for a proper sword instructor until Ned relents and hires a Braavosi water dancer who happens to pass through White Harbor. Sansa, though she mourns the loss of her almost fairy tale in the south, eventually finds contentment helping her mother manage the household. Catelyn teaches her the art of ruling, the subtle diplomacy of managing vassals and alliances, and Sansa proves a quick study, but the world does not remain still. Across the narrow sea, events are moving that will bring fire and blood to Westeros, regardless of what the Starks have done. In the Great Grass Sea, Daenerys Targaryen loses her husband Khal Drogo and walks into his funeral pyre. She emerges with 3 living dragons, the first the world has seen in over a century. In the months that follow, she wanders through the Red Waste, survives the treacheries of Korth, and begins to build her power. She sacks Astapor and takes the Unsullied. She liberates Yunkai and Meereen. She conquers Slaver's Bay and sits as queen over a vast domain, and all the while her dragons grow. When at last Daenerys turns her eyes west, she does not find the fractured, war-torn continent that exists in the true history. She finds something far more dangerous. A united realm under Lannister Tyrell control with a battle-tested army, an empty north that has no quarrel with anyone, and no allies waiting for her arrival. There are no Stark rebels to court, no brotherhood without banners to rally, no broken riverlands full of people desperate for a savior. But there are also cracks in the foundation that Daenerys can exploit. Joffrey is dead by now, poisoned at his own wedding by Olenna Tyrell and Littlefinger in their secret alliance, and young Tommen sits the throne. The boy king is gentle and easily controlled, but the hands that control him pull in different directions. Cersei grows more paranoid by the day, seeing enemies in every shadow and drinking more wine with each passing moon. Marjorie Tyrell plays the beloved queen, while her grandmother schemes behind closed doors. The faith militant rises in King's Landing, armed and emboldened, turning the streets into a battlefield of piety and punishment. Dorne seethes with its own grudges against the Lannisters, the memory of Elia Martell and her murdered children still burning hot in the hearts of the Martells. And on Dragonstone, the ruins of Stannis' ambitions have left the island all but abandoned, its garrison scattered and its defenses crumbling. It is here that Daenerys lands with her dragons and her army. When the ravens carry this news to Winterfell, Robb is the first to read it. He burst into his father's solar, breathless.
Father, dragons! There are dragons in Westeros. Daenerys Targaryen has landed on Dragonstone with 3 of them and an army out of Essos. The Unsullied, Dothraki, and sellsword companies by the thousands. They say the sky above Dragonstone burns at night from dragonflame.
Ned sets down his quill and closes his eyes. For a long time, he says nothing. When he opens them, there is something in his expression that Robb has never seen before. It is not fear, it is resignation.
Then the game is changed entirely. Send ravens to White Harbor and Moat Cailin, double the garrisons, and summon the lords, all of them. If dragons have returned to the world, then the North must be ready for whatever comes next.
And what side do we take? The Lannisters hold the throne, but they are rotten to the core. You have said as much yourself. This Targaryen queen has dragons, but she also has foreign soldiers and a name that half the realm despises. Do we fight for one, against both?
Ned looks at his son, and for just a moment, his mind flashes to a promise he made long ago in a tower in Dorne. A promise to his dying sister, a secret he has carried for nearly 20 years. He glances toward the yard, where Jon Snow is sparring with Robb's squire, laughing as he lands a clean strike.
That is a question I have been dreading for a very long time.
He stands and crosses to the window. Down in the yard, Jon calls out a correction to the squire's footwork. Ghost lies nearby, watching with red eyes. Ned places his hand flat against the cold stone wall.
There is something I must tell you, Robb. Something I should have told you years ago. It concerns Jon, and it concerns this Targaryen queen. Before I say anything more, I need you to understand that everything I have done, every lie I have told, was to protect him.
Robb stares at his father, confusion giving way to a creeping unease.
What do you mean? What about Jon?
Ned turns from the window. His face is drawn, older than his years. He looks at his firstborn son and takes a breath that seems to carry the weight of 2 decades.
Sit down. This will take some time.
The Stark banners are raised. The Lords of the North ride for Winterfell. The great Jon Umber arrives first, thundering through the gates with his men close behind. Lord Manderley sends his sons from White Harbor. The Karstarks, the Mormonts, the Glovers, the Dustins. They all come when called. Even the mountain clans descend from their holdfasts, their axes sharp, and their loyalty fierce. Winterfell has not seen a gathering like this since the days of Robert's rebellion, and this time the Starks ride under no one's banner but their own. And as winter descends upon the kingdoms, Ned Stark must finally reckon with the truth he has buried since the day he rode home from the war. The dragons have returned, and with them the past he thought he had outrun. Daenerys Targaryen isn't the only dragon left in the world. And sooner or later, the secret of Jon Snow's birth will come to light, whether Ned is ready for it or not. By staying in Winterfell, Ned saved his family from the bloodshed that consumed so many great houses. The Red Wedding never happens. Robb Stark lives. The Stark children grow up together, whole and unbroken. But the cost of that safety is a Westeros that was never shaken awake by Ned's investigation, never forced to confront the Lannisters' crimes until it was far too late. And now, with dragons circling above Dragonstone, and a Queen of Fire and Blood preparing to remake the world, Ned Stark must decide whether the truth he kept hidden to protect one boy might be the very thing that saves or destroys them all. That's my view of this alternate timeline. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and endless possibilities, and we are here to uncover them with you. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.